I'm again repeating, Sonali, you don't need to write down your roll number. Roll number should be there in your email address. Okay, just for the knowledge of everybody, on this Tuesday at 12 o'clock will be an MCQ test from autonomic nervous system. Subsequently, later we have also planned a G Pharma test for you. That will be next week sometime. We will let you know in your class or through your group. And this test will be for approximately 30-35 minutes, and it will contain 50 questions. You have to be prompt in answering. There will be no negative marking, don't cheat, and you have to be honest to yourself and be prepared. So over this weekend, please prepare the whole of ANS. Is that clear? I want to get a response from this that I've been well heard and well understood. Then I will go on with my topic for today. I'm waiting for your responses. Priya says yes, ma'am. Kartikeya says it's okay. Mohit says he's understood. Wonderful. Just a second. Oh God. Yes. So I've been well understood, and now I'm going to be telling you the importance of the topic today. Beta adrenergic blockers and management of glaucoma is a very important topic for you. So you have to prepare it well, and these are the drugs which are very commonly used. So let me go ahead now with my class. Okay. So we've already done introduction to autonomic nervous system. Then we did cholinergic transmission, anticholinesterases, anticholinergic drugs. Then we did adrenergic transmission. We did alpha adrenergic blockers. Before that we did adrenergic drugs, then alpha blockers, and now we are going to be doing the last topic, which is the beta blockers. So beta adrenergic blockers act on the beta adrenoreceptors. They antagonize the effects of sympathomimetics mediated through these receptors. Some of them have additional properties like intrinsic sympathomimetic property, membrane stabilizing property, local anesthetic property, and likewise. So we will talk about those exceptional and additional properties, and that makes them important for some particular uses. They are very importantly prescribed group of drugs, probably the most importantly prescribed group of drugs in the whole ANS. Now the classification of beta blockers. They could be non-selective beta blockers, they could be selective beta blockers. Beta blockers, beta receptors are beta 1, beta 2 and beta 3 adrenoreceptors. Non-selective are propranolol, nadolol, timolol and penbutalol, pindolol. These are non-selective beta blockers. Pindolol is one of those non-selective beta blockers which has got intrinsic sympathomimetic activity as well. Then you have cardioselective beta blockers like atenolol, metoprolol, esmolol, bisoprolol, nebivolol, celiprolol and acebutolol. These are the ones with beta 1 selective properties. But here celiprolol and acebutolol have got intrinsic sympathomimetic activity like pindolol. Pindolol is non-selective, celiprolol and acebutolol are selective beta 1 blockers with additional sympathomimetic property. Then you have some beta blockers with additional alpha blocking properties like labetalol and carvedilol. They have alpha and beta. Then you have drugs like bitoxolol and nebivolol who have also got additional alpha blocking property, but here the beta blocking property is selective beta 1 blocking property. So you have to remember the classification. So no intrinsic sympathomimetic activity are propranolol, timolol, nodelol and sotalol. With additional sympathomimetic properties are pindolol and oxprinolol. I told you in the previous slide also. Beta 1 selective blockers. They include atenolol, metoprolol, esmolol, bitoxolol, and nebivolol, and bisoprolol. I told you that sabutrolol and celiprolol have got additional sympathomimetic property, and selective beta 2 blockers are butoxamine. Selective beta 2 blocker, which probably doesn't have much role in therapy. Then you have beta blockers with membrane stabilizing property like propranolol, metoprolol, labetalol, sabutrolol, and pindolol. You have a lot to remember here in terms of names. Which additional property which beta blocker has got. Then you have additional alpha and beta blocking property like labetalol, carvedilol, and bucindolol. Now let's be very clear that we're going to be talking about the non-selective beta blocker propranolol. See, propranolol has been actually one of those prototype beta blockers, one of the first beta blockers to be discovered and put to use. Now it has got some limited actions, but we would, because now want selective actions. Therefore, generalized actions have got not much role now. But we have to read about propranolol to understand what do these non-specific properties entail and where all it can be still used. So now, since you've already been told the adrenergic transmission, the receptors, beta 1 and beta 2, their actions, what will beta agonist produce and what will beta antagonist do. Beta 1 receptor blockade. Action on the heart. Heart has got beta 1 receptors, so it will have negative ionotropic action, negative chronotropic action, negative dromotropic action. I hope you understand the meaning of these three words. So propranolol will decrease the workload, reduce the myocardial oxygen demand. Automaticity of the heart is suppressed and inhibition of the latent pacemakers. All these effects are more evident during the dynamic exercise. So whenever there is sympathetic excess, then the effect will be more prominent. Total peripheral resistance increases because of beta 2 blockade. Remember, beta 2 chiefly has got a vasodilatory action. So total peripheral resistance will also increase. Blood flow to most organs other than brain is reduced. Because the vasodilatory effect is gone, no? With long-term use, total peripheral resistance returns towards normal by unclear mechanisms. Otherwise, you have the peripheral resistance initially increasing. So blood flow will decrease. That is, those non-specific beta blockers do not lower blood pressure in normal individuals, but they do so only in the hypertensive individuals. When we did not have cardioselective beta blockers initially, when propranolol was the drug of choice for the management of hypertension, but now you will realize because of its non-specific beta actions, it has got a lot of issues. Anti-hypertensive effect of beta blockers include how does a non-specific beta blocker produce an anti-hypertensive action? Because it decreases cardiac output. See, all these effects are very logical. If you understand the effect on various receptors, you will by yourself understand why these effects are being produced. So you don't have to always mug up. Try to understand. Decreased cardiac output will lead to less blood pressure. Inhibition of the renin release by the beta receptors in the kidneys. Reduce the angiotensin II production. Decrease central sympathetic outflow. Blockade of the facilitatory effect of presynaptic beta 2 receptors on NE release. So please try to understand that beta 2 receptors, you remember, presynaptically will enhance the release of norepinephrine. So once they are blocked by non-specific beta blockers, there will be less of norepinephrine, less sympathetic outflow, inhibition of renin release, and decreased cardiac output. All these effects will collectively and cumulatively cause decreased blood pressure. This question is important and can be asked in Viva or wherever. Then you have respiratory tract. Since it's a non-specific beta blocker, beta 2 blockade will lead to bronchoconstriction and lead to precipitation of asthma. So you should try and avoid using these drugs in asthmatics and those with peripheral vascular diseases. In eye, there is intraocular tension due to decreased aqueous humor production. This effect we will be Anji. So sorry, my audio was switched off in between. I was just telling you the effect on respiratory system. Beta 2 blockade will lead to what decreased effect of decrease causing decreased intraocular tension. Propranolol is not used because of its local anesthetic action. We will talk about management of asthma and then we will try and realize the effect of these drugs on eye. Yeah. Then central nervous system. These can cause sedation, lethargy, depression, sleep disturbances, and suppression in the performance anxiety. So it has actually got some anti-anxiety effect, because of which it is used in the management of thyrotoxicosis, Skeletal muscle, it antagonizes the adrenaline-induced tremors and impairs exercise capacity. Metabolic effects. In normal persons, propranolol has minimal effect on blood glucose levels. It blocks epinephrine-induced glycogenolysis. It blocks the hypoglycemia-induced sympathetic manifestations. So whenever there is hypoglycemia, a person has oversympathetic manifestations which will be blocked if you give beta blockers. This can be extremely dangerous. It can also block epinephrine-induced glycogenolysis. You remember epinephrine causes glycogenolysis? So it can block that, and it can also block the overactivity of sympathetic system caused in hypoglycemia. Plasma lipid profile is worsened by non-selective beta blockers. Total triglycerides LDL is increased while HDL is decreased. It prevents adrenaline-induced lipolysis. You can see overall effects are bad in the metabolically as well as in the lipid profile. So therefore, these are the reasons one should not generally prefer non-selective beta blockers. Miscellaneous propranolol increases the synthesis and release of prostaglandins in the selected vascular bed. Prevents platelet aggregation and promotes fibrinolysis and reduces portal vein pressure in patients with cirrhosis. So all these are beneficial effects, miscellaneous actions, which can't actually be explained by the effect on beta receptors. Pharmacokinetics, it is completely absorbed orally, extensively metabolized in liver, low bioavailability oral. Plasma half-life is 4 to 6 hours. They say that it is metabolized by the hepatic blood flow. So more the hepatic blood flow, it is actually So it is the metabolism is related to its blood flow, hepatic blood flow. It should decrease the hepatic blood flow, then its metabolism will increase. Therefore, it will over a period decrease its own metabolism indirectly. Plasma half-life is 4 to 6 hours, lipophilic and enters the brain, excreted in urine. Therapeutic uses include essential hypertension as I said, no longer used much because you have better drugs and more specific ones in the management of hypertension, ischemic heart disease, decreased workload, oxygen demand, and increased exercise tolerance. Prevent angina of effort. Myocardial infarction, beta blockers significantly decrease the incidence, recurrence, and mortality in myocardial infarction, which is due to beta blockade, prevents platelet aggregation and promotes fibrinolysis and prevents post-MI ventricular arrhythmias. So there was a time when propranolol was preferred as a prophylaxis of myocardial infarction. But of course, nowadays also you are using, but you rather use cardio-specific beta blockers than propranolol. So selective beta 1 antagonists without intrinsic sympathomimetic activity are preferred. It's the bottom line here. Then their role in the management of congestive cardiac failure. So alongside propranolol, we are also touching on the non-selective beta blockers. Congestive cardiac failure, mild to moderate congestive cardiac failure, gradual and slow advancing, those retard the production of congestive cardiac failure. So it can help in the retarding the progression of congestive cardiac failure. It may be due to antagonism of the beta 1 receptor overactivity. Long-term beta blockade reduces cardiac volume, myocardial hypertrophy, cardiac remodeling and filling pressure, and increases the ejection fraction. So these are the long-term benefits of beta blockade in CHF. Thus there is improvement in the myocardial function, quality of life, and prolonged life. But you generally now prefer more than specific like carvedilol, metoprolol, and bisoprolol are preferred in congestive cardiac failure. Cardiac arrhythmias. Effective in all supraventricular tachycardias associated with high catecholamine levels, reduce ventricular ectopics. This is due to reduction in the atomicity of the pacemaker and latent pacemakers. Membrane stabilizing action is there, which is probably could be doubtful at the therapeutic doses, maybe at a higher dose. So they have got role in the management of myocardial infarction, congestive cardiac failure, and cardiac arrhythmias. You understand, so many cardiac uses of beta blockers. Obstruction of the ventricular outflow for teratology, Pallet's teratology, dissecting aortic aneurysm, hypertrophic cardiac myopathy, when tachycardia is not controlled by other drugs. So obstruction of ventricular outflow, you would prefer these drugs. Beta blockers provide symptomatic relief in this situation. Esophageal varices, hepatic portal hypertension, beta 1 reduces cardiac output. Beta 2 blockade unopposed action of alpha 1 causes vasoconstriction and reduces bleeding. Propranolol and nadolol are preferred in esophageal varices. So you could be asked an explain why question as to why beta blockers, particularly propranolol or a non-specific beta blocker, is preferred in the management of portal hypertension. Because first they reduce the cardiac output, then you have beta 2 blockade. Because of this, there is unopposed alpha 1 action causing vasoconstriction and reduction of bleeding. And in this reason, for this purpose, nadolol and propranolol are preferred. Hyperthyroidism. Beta blockade reduces sympathetic overactivity. Therefore, they are preferred in hyperthyroidism. Non-selective beta blocker is preferred to counteract both cardiovascular effects as well as tremors. For tremor blocking, you need a beta 2 blockade also, na? So therefore, you prefer non-specific beta blocker. They may also inhibit the conversion of T4 to T3. Well, this is a very good explain why question as to why propranolol is preferred in the management of hyperthyroidism-induced anxiety or tremors, or is preferred in hyperthyroidism. So you have beta blockade leading to decreased sympathetic activity, non-selective effect, reduction in tremors, and some particular effect prevents the conversion of T4 to T3. Then non-specific beta blocker preferred in pheochromocytoma because along with alpha blocker during the removal of tumor to antagonize the effects of circulating catecholamines. Then in the management of prophylaxis of migraine. Soon you will be having a lecture on autocoids, 5-hydroxytryptamine and treatment of migraine. There also you will be told that propranolol is given in the treatment of migraine. Anxiety, they reduce peripheral manifestation of anxiety, tremors by reducing sympathetic overactivity. They can be given for alcohol withdrawal, coma, which we will be talking shortly about. Contraindications and adverse effects of propranolol. It can cause AV block, it can cause adverse effect on the profile, lipid profile, it can precipitate angina, it can cause bradycardia, COPD, CNS effects like fatigue, insomnia, depression, cold extremities because of vasoconstriction, decompensated heart failure, diabetes mellitus. The problem can be blunting of the hypoglycemia or delay in the recovery from insulin-induced hypoglycemia. Rebound hypertension and anginal attacks after sudden withdrawal. That generally happens with most blockers. The receptor supersensitivity happens. So these are the contraindications or adverse effects which we can, derive if we know the actual action of these on these receptors. So these are extension of the actions. So they are the side effects, contraindications, or where it should be avoided. No need to repeat. I'm sure you can understand. Now, drug interactions. Drugs like digitalis, verapamil that cause slowing of the SA node and AV conduction can lead to cardiac arrest. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs can oppose the anti-hypertensive actions. Cimetidine and hydralazine may increase the bioavailability by affecting the hepatic blood flow. I told you hepatic blood flow there is a bearing on the metabolism. Enzyme inducers decrease the plasma concentrations. Hypertensive patients with propranolol therapy are sensitive to the pressure responses of adrenaline. So these are some of the drug interactions which are more so when you're giving non-specific cardiac beta receptors blockers. Then other non-selective beta blockers is timolol. Timolol also has got additional intrinsic sympathomimetic activity also. No. It is orally absorbed, moderate first pass metabolism, crosses blood-brain barrier. It can be given topically to decrease the intraocular tension and devoid of membrane stabilizing property. So therefore, it will not harm the eye. You do not want anesthetic effect on the eye when you're giving a drug for the management of glaucoma. Sotalol has also got low lipid solubility, additional potassium channel blocking property, hence used as a class 3 antiarrhythmic drug, sotalol. Timolol for glaucoma, sotalol as an antiarrhythmic drug. Nadolol has got longer half-life and does not cross blood-brain barrier. So propranolol, sotalol, nadolol are all non-specific beta blockers. Then you have pindolol and oxprenolol. These two drugs are non-specific beta blockers. Along with that, they have intrinsic sympathomimetic property as well. So therefore, they will cause less bradycardia and myocardial depression. Because of their beta-2 agonistic activity, they will cause less problem with bronchoconstriction, and rebound hypertension is also less, and the worsening effect on lipid profile is also less. Disadvantage: cannot be used for prophylaxis of migraine as beta-2 action dilates cerebral blood vessels. They cannot be used for migraine. We are talking about the non-specific beta blockers which have got intrinsic sympathomimetic activity. Less suitable for prophylaxis of MI. There are actually hardly any use of the non-specific beta blockers with sympathomimetic activity. You have maximum uses of cardioselective beta blockers. So we are coming to that aspect now, cardioselective beta blockers. At low and therapeutic dose, they block beta 1 receptors, but at high doses, they can block beta 2 receptors as well. Now, advantages over non-selective beta blockers are they are safer in asthma, diabetes, peripheral vascular disease. They have got less deleterious effects on lipid profile. Disadvantages include rebound hypertension, not effective in controlling essential tremors because they do not have additional beta 2 blocking properties. Now let's talk about these drugs individually. They have got high first pass metabolism, shorter half-life. They can be given in hypertension, stable angina, acute MI, and congestive cardiac failure. This we are talking about metoprolol. Atenolol has got longer half-life than metoprolol and does not cross blood-brain barrier. Then you have esmolol. Esmolol has got ultra short acting effect. Half-life is 8 to 10 minutes. It can be given IV in emergency. Ultra short acting, half-life is 8 to 10 minutes. So emergency procedures like atrial fibrillation or to control heart rate and blood pressure during surgery. It is also preferred in critically ill patients in whom adverse effect of bradycardia, heart failure, hypertension may increase or necessitate rapid withdrawal of the drug. So when you require a drug only for a very short action, like immediate management of emergency, or in critically ill patients in whom the effect of bradycardia or heart failure can be very harmful, so it can be given for a short duration, esmolol. So the major high point with esmolol is that it is ultra short acting, specific cardio-specific beta blocker. Then butoxolol. Butoxolol. It has got additional calcium entry blockade, vasodilatory effect. It can cause use as an eye drop for treatment of glaucoma. We will talk about that. Additional calcium entry blockade and vasodilatory action. Nebivolol has got additional, lowering of blood pressure without depressing left ventricular function and reduces the PR, pulse rate. It has got vasodilatory action because of production of nitric oxide. So local release of nitric oxide has got additional vasodilatory property with nebivolol. Then you have acebutolol, well absorbed during the first pass metabolism. So these are some little points which are different in from one cardioselective agent to the other. Well absorbed during the first pass metabolism gets converted to the active metabolite under longer duration. Thus, it has got longer duration of action. Acebutolol gets metabolized to something which is an active metabolite. Now, celiprolol, which is the cardioselective beta blocker, is a partial agonist at beta 2 receptors. So therefore, it will cause vasodilatation by some other mechanism and preferred antihypertensive beta blocker in asthma. So because of its beta 2 agonistic properties, celiprolol is preferred beta antagonist in the patients who also have respiratory issues. Celiprolol for bronchial asthma. Now some newer beta blockers have got some additional effects that contribute to its lowering blood pressure via vasodilatation. This effect is very important. Nitric oxide production by celiprolol and nebivolol, beta 2 adrenergic receptor agonism by celiprolol and cartiolol. Therefore, celiprolol is used in asthmatic patients. Alpha 1 adrenergic antagonism, that means alpha beta both, labetalol and carvedilol. Calcium entry blockade by butoxolol and carvedilol. So butoxolol and carvedilol will also cause vasodilatation because of this action. Tilisolol will have potassium channel opening action and antioxidant action with carvedilol. Just remember this slide, it will give you an idea about the additional properties of various beta blockers. I maybe repeat some. Nitric oxide production by celiprolol, nebivolol, beta 2 agonism by celiprolol, carteolol, alpha blockade by labetalol and carvedilol, calcium entry blockade by bitoxolol, carvedilol, potassium channel opening by tilisolol and antioxidant by carvedilol. So these additional properties will lead to additional and different uses. Now mixed alpha and beta blockade is labetalol, complete antagonism of both alpha and beta. It exhibits optical isomerism and mixture shows selective blockade of alpha 1, blockade of beta 1, beta 2, partial agonist at beta 2, inhibition of the neuronal uptake of norepinephrine. The potency of the mixture of beta blockade is 5 to 10 folds that of alpha receptor blockade. So it's more potent beta blocker than an alpha blocker, labetalol. It causes selective blockade of alpha 1 along with beta 1 and beta 2 blockade. This drug doesn't have any therapeutic use. It was initially thought to be used in the management of pheochromocytoma. Now, effect on blood pressure. Beta 2 agonistic activity, peripheral vasodilatation and bronchodilation. Orally effective. Half-life is, bioavailability is less, half-life is short. Used in hypertension in elderly patients, pheochromocytoma, and in control of rebound hypertension with clonidine withdrawal. You have postural hypertension with the complete alpha and beta blockers. So there is hardly any use. It was thought to be used in patients with pheochromocytoma and in hypertensives in elderly patients. Now carvedilol blocks. Now we have finished with the cardioselective. Then we have finished with alpha and beta blockers like labetalol. Now we are talking about carvedilol. Carvedilol will block beta 1, beta 2, alpha 1 receptors. Additional antioxidant and anti-proliferative activity, membrane stabilizing. They have cardioprotective effects in congestive cardiac failure. Beta blocking properties more prominent than the alpha blocking, like in labetalol. It is carvedilol is used in the management of hypertension, beta 1, beta 2 and alpha 1 receptor blockage. Has got some membrane stabilizing effect also. So this is all for the cardioselective beta blockers now and their additional properties. Now let me quickly talk about the management of glaucoma. So glaucoma, you all know, we have discussed with cholinomimetics also, is a disease in which there is a raised intraocular tension which leads to persistent damage to the optic nerve and blindness eventually. And it is usually caused by either impaired drainage of the aqueous humor. What is aqueous humor? Aqueous humor is a fluid which is formed or produced by ciliary epithelium in the posterior chamber of the eye. So either there is excess of formation of aqueous humor or there is impaired drainage, that this raised intraocular tension can happen, which will have a back pressure on the optic nerve and will lead to blindness subsequently. So this is what it is: posterior chamber, subarachnoidal space, sclera, cornea. This is the trabecular meshwork, very important, canal of Schlemm, anterior chamber, iris, pupil and lens. I hope you know this diagram of eye, and there the posterior chamber, this aqueous humor is being formed and it requires proper drainage, and this drainage is controlled by this canal of Schlemm and trabecular meshwork. Either there is excessive synthesis or there is improper drainage, that there becomes more aqueous humor in the eye. So normally it is a wide angle glaucoma which is generally treatable. Acute open close angle glaucoma requires surgery and is potentially fatal. This is a normal eye and this is the glaucoma eye. There is a lot of pressure on the optic nerve here and there is more aqueous humor. Types, I told you, primary, secondary and congenital. Primary can be, we are more bothered about primary, narrow angle or open angle. Narrow angle generally requires surgery or acute treatment. Whenever in exam we will generally ask you the treatment of the wide angle glaucoma or a chronic simple glaucoma. Treatment of glaucoma, you require alpha agonists. You've been told drugs like phenylephrine will increase the outflow. They will cause meiosis and increase the outflow, alpha agonist. Then you have muscarinic agonists like cholinergic drugs. They will also cause meiosis and increase outflow. Meiosis by effect on the circular muscle of iris. Meiosis of alpha agonist by effect on the radial muscle of the iris. Beta blockers decrease the secretion. Alpha 2 agonists are used, particularly like clonidine, apraclonidine, decrease the secretion, brimonidine, which crosses the eye, decrease the secretion. So somewhere you are improving the outflow, the other places you are decreasing the secretion. Beta blocker decrease the secretion. Prostaglandins analogs increase the outflow. Carbonic anhydrase secretion inhibitors decrease the secretion. Extremely important diagram telling you how things are being produced and how these drugs are acting. You have alpha. सबसे पहले we read about muscarinic agonist, alpha agonist, beta 2 blockers, alpha 2 agonists, prostaglandin analogs, and carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. These are all the drugs which are used for the management of glaucoma. Beta blockers like timolol, cartiolol, bitoxolol, they reduce the aqueous humor production by blocking the beta 2 receptors present in the ciliary epithelium. So you require non-specific beta blockers for this reason, and they should not have a membrane stabilizing property. They should not have a local anesthetic action. So otherwise, eye will be hurt by or any damage from outside. Okay. So this is about beta blockers. Then you have advantages over other miotics like cholinergic or adrenergic agonists. No change in the pupil size, no myopia, no headache, no fluctuation of the intraocular tension, and convenient once or twice daily dosing. Non-selective alpha agonists include which can be used include epinephrine, dipivefrin. They facilitate the outflow of aqueous humor by improving the uveoscleral outflow. Dipivefrin is a prodrug of epinephrine and penetrates the eye and cornea better. Alpha 2 agonists, as I told you, also help in increasing the reduction in the formation of aqueous humor. They include apraclonidine, brimonidine. They reduce the formation of aqueous humor and they are potent ocular hypotensive. But with apraclonidine, ocular allergic reactions can happen. So I'm just explaining each of these categories which was just told to you. Then you have brimonidine. It is approved for the maintenance of glaucoma treatment and may be suitable as a monotherapy. This drug has fewer central nervous system and ocular side effects. And the increased selectivity of alpha 2 receptor sites is postulated to decrease intraocular tension by limiting the aqueous production and facilitate the outflow. So alpha 2 agonists, they both decrease the production of aqueous humor and improve the outflow. There are only two things, production and outflow. Then you have prostaglandin analogs like latanoprost, bimatoprost. They are alpha 2 receptor agonists and they increase the uveoscleral outflow. They exhibit a sustained intraocular pressure. Lowering effect is throughout the day and night. I'm talking of prostaglandin analogs, which have rarely received a lot of confidence in the management of glaucoma. They are the first line drug in the management of open angle glaucoma. Ocular irritation and pain and iris pigmentation can happen. Carbonic anhydrase inhibitors include acetazolamide, dorazolamide, reduction in the formation of aqueous humor by decreasing the formation of bicarbonate ions. Oral acetazolamide is the first line therapy in the acute angle glaucoma. So, carbonic anhydrase inhibitors act by decreasing the production of the aqueous humor. Cholinomimetics, I've already told you, pilocarpine, physostigmine. These are directly active cholinomimetics of cholinesterase inhibitors. Ciliary, they cause ciliary muscle contraction, opening of the trabecular meshwork, pupillary constriction, and pulling of the iris away from the trabecular meshwork, and hence facilitate the drainage of the aqueous humor. Cholinomimetics. Side effects, of course, you know, brow pain, headache, reduced night vision, retinal detachment, and cataract. In very severe cases like narrow angle glaucoma, you can use hypertonic solutions of mannitol and glycerol. So that's all for the management of glaucoma. I'm again coming to this slide. Yeah, this slide. We have dealt with all the drugs, carbonic anhydrase inhibitors, prostaglandin analogs, alpha-2 agonists like trimonidine, beta blockers like timolol, muscarinic agonists we just talked about like cholinesterase inhibitors, and directly acting cholinomimetics like pilocarpine, and alpha agonists like phenylephrine, and how they are all going to be producing a reduction in the intraocular tension by decreasing the synthesis or increasing the outflow of the aqueous humor. And I think with this, I will finish my lecture for the day and finish with the topic of autonomic nervous system quite in time. So that's about all. So we have about 200 students joining over a period. I hope everything was okay. Any remarks? As I told you, you don't need to write your roll numbers on the answer question session. We get your roll numbers through your email IDs. You must have your number incorporated in your ID. So Dhruv Boria has thanked me. Thank you very much, ma'am. I hope you understood, Dhruv. It was not as if, okay, madam, good riddance, it is over, thank God. I hope this thank you didn't mean that. All right. So, my dear students, it was a different experience taking class with you on this platform. I always wish that we could physically meet, and then like we've always been doing, but this was the only way out in this tough times that we have been facing right now. I always wish you a very, very good life, happy and safe, and may things settle down and we can be back in the college. Until then, keep yourself busy studying, enjoying the best you can do in this time, exercising and reading. All right. So, with this message, I would like to close my lecture and I would like to wish you all the very best. Now, particularly for the ANS exam, which is going to happen on this Tuesday, you will get a separate link, for that. That will not be this link, and that link you will have to be joining. And once most of you would have joined, we will display the paper. It will be a MCQ question answer session, and approximately 50 questions, and that you have to choose the best option there. I hope I am very clear. I've repeated it many number of times, and soon after this, we will also be holding a G Pharma test for you. Is that clear? Shall we call it off and say bye bye?